Hello and welcome to another video and podcast from Fantasy Football Scout. We've already looked at Manchester City, Liverpool and Everton options, as well as given our top tips for pre-season friendlies. Now it's time for the community to take over. We've taken 3 of your key issues for today's show. My name is Joe and today I'm joined by Neale. Neale, welcome. How are you?
I'm very well, but most of the point, how are you? It's good to be back with you. I think it's my first video with you since last season, so it's great to have you back and anchoring the show and making it look a more credible production.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you. It's good to be back again. For those that don't know, I had a stroke and had an illness at the end of the last season, and we were just discussing how it affected the end of my season. But it also obviously meant that I couldn't do various things like walk and talk properly. But now I've bounced back, so to speak, and here now, ready for another podcast and video. So I think we should come to the first questions, and it's all about premium strikers, and in particular about this guy, Aubameyang. Brandon Walsh asks, are premium strikers being frozen out of the game? So that's in general, really. We have already discussed the likes of Aguero and Kane before. Aubameyang, though, joint top scorer last season. This is from FPL Partridge. Aubameyang was joint top scorer last season. He plays a weakened Newcastle and Burnley in the first games. 6 goals in 3 games against those opposition, he says. Is he being overlooked? And FPL dare do the punt, Kane or Aubameyang for game week 1 onwards. So Neale, what do you think? What do you think about Aubameyang in relation to premium strikers in general?
It's a tough one, isn't it? Because we surround ourselves with like-minded people on Twitter and on the fantasy community where we can just assume that premium strikers are no longer a viable option. There's a big momentum behind going 5 at the back and trying to squeeze both Salah and Sterling into your team. And the premium forwards seem to be the fall guys at the moment. The ways of managing your budget so you can go big at the back. And so the likes of Aubameyang, Kane, Aguero are relatively unpopular. I say that with a disclaimer because they've still got decent ownerships in FPL itself. Now, of course, at this stage of the year, there are so-called casuals playing, people who are just, roped into it for work leagues and things. So we tend to pay more attention, I would say, without sounding elitist, to folk on Twitter or on the Fantasy Football Scout site to see where the mood's carrying us. So yeah, Aubameyang, I've barely heard in any drafts, any RMTs I've seen on the site. If somebody is going big up top, it tends to be Kane. Sterling, Aguero, I think you and David covered last week, was it, on one of the videos? So won't delve too deeply into him. But yeah, Aubameyang, Golden Boot winner, 22 goals, high scoring forward. I think he was the best value forward above 9 million last season in terms of points per million spent. I know that's a very sort of limited metric, that, but he's got his credentials. I'll start with the positives. I know folk are talking about the fact that he wasn't a reliable starter, which I think was true towards the back end of the season when Arsenal were in the Europa League. And I think Emery switched his focus more towards that competition rather than the Premier League. But first 25 games of the season, started 23 of them. So he was a reliable pick for what, 2/3 of the season. And we have maybe our views tainted by the fact that Arsenal were going deep into the Europa League. So I don't think that's necessarily an issue at the start of this campaign, particularly as Arsenal aren't in the Champions League. It'll be the same as last season in the Europa League. I'm guessing he'll put out, reserve teams in the group stages, focus more on the Premier League. So I think that's not necessarily much of an issue. Positives, more bonus points than any FPL forwards, more big chances than anybody. His conversion rate is always pretty high. I think in his first season, which was admittedly only 10, 11 games, something like that, I think his conversion rate was up at about 30%, which is very good. This season, which is over a 38-game campaign, 23.4%, that's very good as well. So he is a reliable finisher. A semi-reliable starter, certainly in the early part of the season, I would suggest. And yeah, Arsenal fixtures aren't too bad. You mentioned there Burnley and the Newcastle team. I'm dreading this season as a Newcastle fan. I don't know what's going to happen, but yeah, back against whoever's playing us in the early weeks of the season.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of the cons as well. So looking at, for example, points per match averages, which we weren't, it's not the be all and end all, but even just looking at the premium forwards, so Keane, Aguero and Aubameyang, the 3 10 million plus options, Aubameyang's points per match average was the worst of those 3. So already he's at a bit of a hindrance just competing with those 2 strikers, let alone the fact that we're contemplating not having one premium striker at all. The fixtures aren't that good apart from Newcastle and Burnley. Again, I would suggest so. They've got Liverpool and Spurs after that. They've got Man United away. I think I'd be more inclined to look at him from game week 8, which is when they've got a really good run. They've got home games against, I think, Bournemouth, Palace, Wolves, who might be in Europe, Southampton, Brighton, away at Norwich and Sheffield United. So they've got a really good stretch from 8 to 16. I think I'd be more inclined to look at him then than from the off. And I think that gives us a chance to assess where the sort of form is in terms of positions. It's a bit of an audition, really, the first 7 game weeks, I think. We don't know what's going to happen this season. We'll talk about this more later in the podcast about premium defenders, but it's the assumption that this season will pan out exactly as last season did. It doesn't always happen. So we might find in the early weeks of the season that the premium forwards are banging the goals in. So I think if I am going premium striker, it'll probably be Kane. Certainly for the first half dozen game weeks of the season, maybe beyond that. And then I'll probably reassess around about game week 8, which is a good time really if you're generally that's when wildcards are sort of played. There'll be an international break around then. So that might reassess him then. But I think for now, not for me. Yeah. But I would be foolish to write him off, I think, as a long-term asset. And I'll certainly be reassessing come game week 8. How about yourself?
Yeah, well, no, I'm one of those people, I guess, whose memory of Aubameyang has been tainted by seemingly unexpected benchings. So I did look into it as well, like you, and I did find kind of pros and cons. So obviously the big pros are 22 goals, joint golden boot last season. So, and some reasonable fixtures. So what's the catch? And I think playing time is a catch, though. He could come off the bench and score brace even, but sometimes he just had a few minutes. And pre-season comments, I think, will help around formation, how Emery wants to set up, and obviously the pre-season team sheets as well. It's worth noting he played 2,722 minutes, which is the 4th best amongst all strikers. So there's 3 better strikers than him in terms of minutes. It's still 698 minutes shy of the maximum, which is 3,420 minutes, and he's 400 minutes short. So factor that into that's around about 4 or 5 games short of Jimenez, who is 4 million less, and he's also short of Josh King, and his minutes were 2,963. So he's already lagging, as you said. His points per million is lagging, and in terms of just simply turning up on the pitch, he's lagging behind these other options, many of whom, like Jimenez, are cheaper as well. So that's a con for me. Newcastle is away. Yes, Newcastle are seemingly offloading anyone with the word striker in their resume and CV. So that's gone. So I think they're playing with Muta up front at the moment, whoever. But the defence hasn't really changed that much. And to be honest, their defence and their defensive midfield I didn't think was too bad last season. So I'm more tempted to perhaps pick an Arsenal defender against Newcastle rather than an Arsenal attacker. It's a way we saw how poor Arsenal were on the road last season. They also have Liverpool in that early stretch as well. I don't think it's as great a start as many others. I marginally prefer Kane like you, but I also prefer Vardy as well. But what the hell? I'm just human. So what do I know? So I consulted the Rate My Team computer, which is Fantasy Football Scout's prediction tool. which looks at things far more objectively. And it says that over the first 6 weeks, Aubameyang will actually marginally outscore Kane and is marginally actually better value per million than Mane and Aguero and De Bruyne. So if those considering those ones, perhaps Aubameyang is a better option. Although, as I said, I do prefer others. I think I prefer the value of Bournemouth's King, more minutes. Leicester's Vardy, similar minutes to Aubameyang, 2 million cheaper as well, and you can make that upgrade fairly easily by getting 2 million from elsewhere. It's not like the difference is like 5-6 million or something. Which brings us nicely, I think, to the next set of questions, and a lot of those kind of 6 million, 7 million type options. Bournemouth and Leicester assets. So we've covered Everton as mid-price options. But what about those from Bournemouth and Leicester? Daryl B, who do we trust more, says Bournemouth or Leicester, or indeed Everton? I think that's a key question. We've got loads of questions about them, but I think Daryl B kind of sums it up really. It's all about trust, and it's about those three teams because there are a lot of similarly priced options. So what do you think about Bournemouth, Leicester, those kind of mid-priced options, and how they stack up against Everton that we've already mentioned with superb fixtures?
Well, if it's a question of trust, then I would be inclined to side with Leicester over Bournemouth. There's a bit of a streaky team, Bournemouth. We know about their away form last season. We don't know how it's going to address that over the summer. But I think fixtures-wise, I think Bournemouth's marginally edged. I think Everton's possibly better. But in terms of a straight fight between Bournemouth and Leicester, then I think Bournemouth's. Although we might be getting a bit blinded by the first two. So Sheffield United and Villa, two newly promoted teams. We don't know how they're going to start with it. They generally have a bit of an early season bounce. We saw was it Huddersfield beat Palace on the first day 2 seasons ago. And but then again, we saw Bournemouth beat Cardiff on game week 1 last season. So we don't quite know how that's going to go. But on paper, those are the best opening 2 fixtures, I think, of any team. Sheffield United and Villa. I think beyond that, they're not that good. I think City, Leicester and Everton between 3 and 5 is trickier than it looks. On our ticker, Leicester and Everton are down as sort of a light blue shade, which means, fairly reasonable fixture. But they were 2 of the form teams of the back end of last season. So around that, they've got, games against West Ham and Arsenal, who are very leaky. So I think it's decent. It's a decent enough start. Certainly wouldn't be going anywhere near the defence, Bournemouth. But yeah, it's the mid-price, midfield and forward options, which many of our users and followers on Twitter are concerned about. And I think that's what's prompted their question. So, I think I'll be starting with definitely at least one Bournemouth asset. Probably a Leicester 1-2. I'm not entirely sure about that. I think Leicester's first 4 actually are decent. So I think Wolves will be coming off the back of a Europa League game 3 days previous. They've got a really thin squad, Wolves. They've let Costa and Cavallero go out on loan. So they haven't brought anybody in yet. I assume that'll change. Chelsea are very much an unknown quantity. And then Leicester's got Sheffield United and Bournemouth after that. So not a bad start. I think looking at Leicester first, I think formation is going to be the key. And you mentioned that before about Arsenal. I think we can't make a decision yet until we've seen Leicester in action. How are they going to integrate Perez for a start? I believe they're playing tonight, actually, Leicester. I think it might be tonight is their first game. I'll double check that. But we're keeping on top of all the minutes and the formations and things in our scout notes. How Perez features in that side, I think, is going to be key to our decisions.
Yeah.
We've already done a lot of analysis on Maddison versus Tielemans. Which is, fair enough, but that was based on the fact that they were playing essentially in the same position. So with 2 advanced central midfielders in that 4-1-4-1. Now that could all change if suddenly Rodgers decides to revisit a 4-3-1-2 that he played in that Neale season of 2013-14 in Liverpool. So if it's like Perez up top of Vardy, then that's almost a decision made for me. If it's Perez as an out-of-position striker, then possibly. And in that sort of situation, you'd expect Tielemans to be well further back, which I think makes it easier. I think one thing I'll be looking out for early in the season, yes, I'll probably be putting on one of them based on what happens over the next 3 weeks in the friendlies, is how Maddison's numbers are sort of shaping up to how they did before Tielemans arrived. So I did a members piece a couple of weeks ago, and it was very hard to assess the impact of Tielemans on Maddison because there was a regime change. So most of Leicester's numbers went up when Rodgers came in anyway. So it's very hard to say that Tielemans made Leicester a better team or a worse team. The naked eye test would suggest he's made them a much better team because he was really good. That sort of range of passing. It bodes well for Vardy this season. I think if you've got someone like Tielemans alongside Maddison, sort of threading those through balls behind defences, and particularly in the early stage of the season when Leicester's playing a few of the bigger teams and they're going to be breaking a bit more. So Vardy's actually probably one of the decent options. I'll focus more on the midfielders now. I think the one thing I noticed about Maddison was that his XGI rating dropped.
So that's expected goal involvement for
for
mere humans like me.
Yeah, it's we should have a glossary on our site. I think of these initialisms. So Maddison's XGI rate and big chance creation rate went down after Tielemans arrived. So would make sense because they're not funneling as much play through Maddison now that they've got Tielemans. I think beforehand it was Mendy and Ndidi, two cloggers in central midfield, and most of Leicester's creative play was coming through Maddison. Now that they've got Tielemans, it would make sense that he would have see more of the ball. But Maddison's that's a minor worry. I wouldn't put anybody off based on that. It's a small sample size, and during that game week 26 to 38 after Tielemans arrived, Maddison's key passes were better than anybody. So like ordinary chances created. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. I think for me, to summarise after that long ramble, I'm going to wait to see how Leicester shape up in pre-season. I think Maddison's definitely worth the 0.5 million over Tielemans. I think Tielemans really overachieved towards the back end of the season. I do expect him to have a good season. I think he'll crack double figures for attacking returns. No worry about that. But I think with Maddison on set pieces, then I think that probably justifies it. It's now for me whether Perez can offer both the saving and the out of position tag over Maddison, and I'm going to keep an eye on what happens in pre-season, because if it is Perez alongside Vardy, then I think probably decision made. But, I'll let you go into Leicester before I even tackle Bournemouth.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think Perez is a wait and see. We've seen what we've done at Newcastle, but is he going to be like Iheanacho or Okazaki? Is he basically going to be Vardy light, as in not score occasionally, get a few minutes, but not as many as Vardy? So I looked at game week 29 to 38 last season. Once again, small sample size, but it's the Rodgers era that we know of with Leicester currently. As a result of that, I've got Maddison in my squad at the moment, my draft squad. He is Leicester's chances man, as you said. He's had 25 chances over that small period. Luke Dean at Everton, same number of chances, and Sigurdsson similar as well. Vardy, 9 goals over that period. So I think that Vardy offers something of value there at 9 million in terms of that level of goals with that creativity in midfield. And I would say he's fixture proof in that he has a habit of scoring in the tough games against the tough teams, but he can also score against the easier sides. Sigurdsson I want, but costs 8 million. And if Maddison's offering a very similar output, say more potentially 1 million less, then and Luca Dean indeed is 2 million less than Sigurdsson, unlike them. So, but yeah, I mean, do you want to add any more about those other teams then? So that's Leicester, I think, covered. I'm going in on Maddison. I'm willing to take that bet, and I'm willing to take that bet on Vardy as well. But yeah, what do you think?
Yeah. So Bournemouth, I'm definitely starting with one Bournemouth asset, and I'm pretty confident it's going to be King. It depends on my structure, but I think even if I do have a premium striker alongside a cheaper striker, I think it'll be King, certainly for the first two. Now, I'll point folk in the direction of an article I wrote last week or the week before. If anyone's looking for a King v Wilson comparison, we made this, it's a members piece, but we made it free to all. So I do think if it's TLDR, Wilson justifies the extra price. He's definitely worth an extra 1.5 million. He's a central striker. We've seen, if you look at the heat maps of King v Wilson, King drifts a lot out to the left flank, especially. Fraser tends to cut in a bit off that left wing. Same with Brooks on the right. I think King can drift a lot to the wide areas, which is not where you want your striker to be. So I think Wilson, warrants being 1.5 million more expensive. He's a sort of predator in the box. He's the one getting the most big chances. Profits more from Fraser's creativity, as we saw last season. Had this incredible telepathic relationship where they were assisting each other on a very regular basis. I think they broke the record, didn't they? For
yes, great partnership.
30 in a 38 game season. I think for goal combinations between the two. And what I would say about King is, and this is what's swinging it towards him for me. I mean, if I had a limited budget, then I probably would go Wilson. But I think what makes King a decent alternative, I don't think he'll match Wilson for points. I think it's whether you can get close enough to justify saving 1.5 million and then spending it somewhere else in your team. So Wilson and King at home last season at Vitality, King actually outscored Wilson. More points, more goals, more points per match. I think more double-digit hauls as well. It was away from home where Wilson really kicked on, and the difference was astonishing, really. I think 15 attack and returns. Sorry, that's not right. I might be right, actually. 15 attack and returns away from home for Wilson. 3 for King. I think Wilson's points per match 6.4 away from home. King 2.7. So he just didn't deliver on the road, and that's where there was such a disparity between the points, and that just the Norwegian wasn't delivering away from home. But I did look at XGI Delta. Now, again, for the uninitiated, XGI Delta is the difference between the actual number of attack and returns, so goals and assists, and what Opta think the player ought to have scored based on the quality of chances and the chances they created. So only Zaha overachieved more than Wilson in away games last season, while not a single Premier League player underachieved more than King. So really, on the basis of the quality of the chances and the quality of the chances that they're creating, the gap ought to have been a lot closer, and Wilson would have still outscored King by a decent margin, but 3 goals, no assists for King on the road. It should have been more than that. So I think he's a quality player. You know, we've seen in the previous season before that, he's always outscored Wilson in the 3 seasons before that. So I think he, it's not the fact that he's a poor finisher or anything like that. I just think it was a bit of bad luck last season away from home, and I think he'll get closer to Wilson. As I say, I'll stress, I don't think he'll match him. He has got penalties on his side, so that's possibly an advantage in the early weeks of the season. We don't know how VAR's going to pan out. But that's why I'll be going with King. I think that 1.5 million saving I'm making can be spent elsewhere. I think he'll get within maybe like sort of 3 or 4 goals, maybe a couple of assists to Wilson this season. And I think that maybe warrants going with King or Wilson. But, I could be wrong. And Wilson's the more popular option in FPL at the moment. So, you got any thoughts about myself? Particularly, I think Fraser as well.
Definitely Brooks, Fraser, and Wilson are all on my watch list. But it's King that is in my draft because I'm looking, of course, for points, but I'm also looking value for money for those as well. And I think that King offers that. I think that Wilson potentially could offer that, but can Wilson stack up to Vardy at just 1 million difference? They're very similarly priced now. So Wilson's now messing with the big boys in terms of getting towards premium prices, and he's got to justify that as well. So I had a look at that era again with Rodgers, 29 to 38. So, and I compared Leicester with Everton and also some key assets with Bournemouth as well, because I think that's, it's a small sample, 20 game weeks 29 to 38 last season, but I do think with Leicester, that's a massive turnaround between 29 and 38. They had under new management, so they did change as well. So just looking at that. So what's interesting is some of these figures here. So bearing in mind this, once again, game weeks 29 to 38. Now Callum Wilson had 21 goal attempts. Josh King only had 20. So there's one difference. But there's 1.5 million difference this year. So it's just that solitary shot is dividing them. Big chances, Callum Wilson had 10, but Josh King had 8. Once again, I'm thinking 1.5 million difference, that's worth it as well. Chances created, Josh King is a bit better with 7, Callum Wilson just 5, and goals, Callum Wilson 4, Josh King 3 though. I like the look of that. Callum Wilson obviously had 4 assists and Josh King had none there. Neither had any fantasy assists. And Callum Wilson also had 1 less start than Josh King as well. So at the end of all of that, it says to me that I do agree with you, Wilson is the better option, but he's been priced as the better option. Yeah. So I don't know if they're, in FPL terms, they're comparable in that same way. So I'm looking in terms of Josh King and 6.5 assets, and looking in terms of Fraser's and Brooks, for example. So in terms of shots, Fraser at 18 shots in that period, game weeks 29 to 38, is very impressive. And 7.5, I'm actually more tempted by Fraser than I am by Wilson, especially because his chances created is 30. Callum Wilson is 5, remember, so that's a huge difference, and he's 7.5 this year as well. A couple of goals, 5 assists as well over that period. Once again, I do stress it's a small period there, but you can take any, you can take the whole season if you want with those. But I was using this to compare really with Leicester and how they stack up in that period. I like King, fits in well with the structure, but I am aware that I might have to move for Wilson, and 1.5 moving up is tricky but doable. It's not like moving up from 6.5 to say a 12.5 million player. So I do think they're options. But Leicester, so I just wanted to just finally mention Leicester. Ben Chilwell is someone that's in and out of my drafts all the time. I am interested to see him in pre-season. I think he could be worth 5.5 this season. There is the possibility of Brighton's Lewis Dunk becoming a Leicester player and a permanent mainstay. But as I said, with those fixtures, it's Vardy really who I consider fixture proof. So I'm not tremendously interested in Leicester's defence early on. Speaking of which, that's a nice segue into the next topic, which is some people have been asking about a back 5. Lots of people are going for this back 5 option, so 5-4-1 or etc. So FPL Boona, is back 5 really viable? FPL Physio, everyone's got an FPL in their name, is 5 at the back really worth it? And Bambi, no FPL in his name, so brownie points there to Bambi, is 5-3-2 too inflexible for early bandwagons? What do you think of this trend for 5 at the back, and will it actually happen, and will those that go for it actually profit from it?
I think this was the trickiest thing to answer, because ultimately we don't know. I think we can make good estimates about which player is going to hit the ground running based on the fixtures, like in terms of direct comparisons. In terms of strategy and formation, that we really don't know going into this new season. As I said earlier, the danger is you make an assumption that 2019-20 is going to pan out the same way as last season did. So cast our minds back to game week 1. I was looking at our scout picks for game week 1 last season, and we went big in attack. I think it was Aguero and Aubameyang. I think we had Salah in there. I think we had Alexis Sanchez. Good grief. So we've gone light at the back, which I think just shows how faddy FPL is. You know, it's very reactionary to the season just gone. Now, obviously, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know how it's going to pan out. I think 5 at the back, viable, yes. Financially doable, yes. You are unlikely to go have the same luxury of doing that in the other positions. You couldn't go with, say, 4 premium midfielders in midfield, not really, without really damaging the rest of your squad. Same with strikers. Could you have 3 premium strikers? I don't think so. But it's doable in defence. You could have 5, maybe 5.5 million plus defenders and not disrupt the balance of your team too much. Yes, it would be light up top. I personally probably won't be doing it. That is I'm probably thinking with my gut or anything else rather than brain or heart. I've always played FPL from a sort of attacking mindset. I saw your tweet the other day where you said FPL is about fun, and willing a clean sheet for 90 minutes is not fun.
No.
But clenchingly nerve-wracking. And
winning
even if
5 clean sheets, imagine that.
Yeah. Well, exactly, yeah. And your goalkeeper.
Yeah.
And then and then obviously the reason we're considering these defenders is not just because of their clean sheet potential, it's because of their attacking returns as well. So yes, these defenders can compensate for any kind of freak goal. What I would say is that last season, I wouldn't say unprecedented because things like that have happened before. But in terms of previous years, almost unparalleled. So the last time a team had 20 clean sheets in a single season was Man United in 2011-2012. Now, we had 2 of those teams doing it last season, which was Liverpool and City. So are they going to keep as many this season? Possibly. But statistically, not likely, based on what we've seen previous. Now, obviously, they're head and shoulders above everybody else. But I will just give an example. How is Rodri going to hit the ground running at Man City?
Yeah.
We don't know. So Fernandinho's been a massive part of their success. This will be his swan song season. He'll be phased out, I think, gradually. And Rodri's obviously the man they brought in to replace him as that defensive anchor. Is he going to be as effective in front of the back row? We don't know. Just looking at Everton, example, because they're another team whose premium defenders we're looking at. Will they cope without Zuma if he stays at Chelsea? David did an article this morning on how impactful he's been alongside Keane. They might have Idrissa Gueye missing a game week 1 because he's away with Senegal. We don't know. I think what I will say is that I can understand why people are doing it, and I'm definitely going to start my season with at least 3 premium defenders, I think, and I've never done that before. So I think that in itself is a reflection of the value you can get in defence. I think you can look at Alexander-Arnold, for example, and say, well, 13 clean sheets. I think that was a record breaker.
Yeah.
Could he match that again? I think he could. I think he only made 29 appearances last season. He missed out on 9 games. He had that injury. Yes, Gomez was out for a long period, so there wasn't the rotation risk as much. I think he will drop out a couple of times. But Gomez's future, I think, is at centre half rather than right back. And I think this was Fantasy Freak or Fantasy Free AK. I don't know how he pronounces his username, but he did a really good hot topic a week or so ago on the Milner effect on Alexander-Arnold. So Alexander-Arnold's assists mostly came to the back end of the season when he was on set pieces. Now, he didn't have the luxury of that early on when Milner was a regular. It's a similar situation with Salah on penalties. Now, Milner's 34, I think, turning this season. And I wouldn't expect him to play as much of a bigger part, especially they've got Oxlade-Chamberlain. Henderson's now a right-sided central midfielder. So I don't think Milner's going to be as involved as much. So I think Alexander-Arnold's going to have more of a monopoly at set-piece situations. We all saw how good Liverpool were from them last season. Van Dijk and Mane with his aerial ability. So I do think he could go somewhere close to matching that this season, and I think he's going to be in my team. I'll be starting with at least 3. I think 5, probably not. And it's. I don't like the word bandwagon. One of our users was saying, "Is it inflexible for a reaction to bandwagons?" I tend to try and avoid bandwagons early in the season. I like to stick with what I've set out. Yes, change it now and again if there is obvious signs that someone isn't performing. But I think if you've got a strategy, try and stick to it as much as you can in the first couple of weeks. Don't react off game week 1 or anything like that. But I will very likely have a more balanced team. I know I'm not going to tread your toes here, Joe. I know you're going to discuss more about flexibility and an exit strategy and things like that. But I try and avoid having a rigid structure, just purely because I like to be within a transfer or 2 of changing things around. And I'll pass over to you now because I think you're going to talk more about that. I don't want to cover any of the points you're about to make. But that's one of the reasons I'll not be going with 5, I think.
Okay, so there's 2 of us and we've got 1 vote for no 5 at the back. So yeah, I'm going to go back to that question about inflexibility there. So Bambi asks, is 5 at the back too inflexible for those early bandwagons? Now I'm slightly different to you. I love an early season bandwagon. And in the past, I bandwagoned upon Zaki at Wigan. Remember him? 10 goals, 10 games. Andy Carroll, I don't know if you remember him, at Newcastle. He was a very good cheap bandwagon early on. And Darren Bent at Sunderland as well is another one. And of course Michu at Swansea. These were fantastic bandwagons. Now I do accept though that for every one of those there's a Steve Mounier or someone like that, someone to be avoided. But an early bandwagon can be a good thing. And I like to reserve maybe 1 or 2 cheap or kind of mid-priced assets to hop aboard those. So I like a 6.5 striker this year because you can hop on any emerging 5 million, 5.5, 6 million or another 6.5 striker really. So and I like that. So I do like to go on that. But I do think 5 at the back, to go back to that, bit of a tangent there, but I do think 5 at the back is too inflexible. I'm always keeping an eye on exit strategies. Yes, we have a wild card, but I can't use the wild card every time I regret a mistake because we only get 2 a year. Better off to prepare for the mistakes ahead. 5 at the back means sacrifices have to be made in attack. And so some of the ones I've seen, perhaps one of Sterling or Salah goes, or they're supplemented by cheap bench fodder, but not the likes of, say, Maddison or Sigurdsson, these mid-priced options that could score big. In attack too, I've seen many with just one striker, 6.5 striker like King, for example. But what if Kane or Aguero is needed? Can 5 million be found elsewhere if you have a bunch of those players? However, if you start with maybe Kane and you want to go to Aguero, 1 million easy. If you start from Vardy, you want to go to Kane, 2 million. That's much easier. 5 to 6 million, finding that's a whole player you've got to find somewhere. I advocate caution and balance, basically. Have a good players in each category. So across defence, midfield and forward. Spread the money to ensure you can free up that money for any player you want within 2 moves. So for example, as I've given that example, Vardy up front means that only 2 million is needed if you want to get Kane. So that's downgrading perhaps an expensive defender to a 4 million. For me, I'm thinking 4-4-2 or 3-4-3. With a possible move to a 5 at the back. I'm not ruling it out completely. I just don't want to start with a 5 at the back. I think it's too inflexible. If it proves invaluable, in the meantime, I'll go with that. So also, as another factor, lots of 5 at the back options I've seen involve a 4.5 non-playing striker. Now, that's the same for 4-4-2s as well. But I must admit, I do prefer spending just 4 million on a non-player. So they've only, until a 4.5 playing striker emerges, I'm not so interested. So you can only get a 4 million player from defence. You can only get 1 defender, so that's 1 down already. So already you're looking at 4 at the back, not 5 at the back. I want to put as much of my budget into the first 11 as possible and have 2 playable bench players. I'm not too bothered about the 3rd sub. So that's the way I like to set up. 5 at the back doesn't fit in with that. And that's happened over a number of seasons, over a decade's worth of seasons, where we've had expensive defenders before. We've had Vidic, we've had Baines, we've had all sorts of expensive defenders. And to be honest, I don't see this season as tremendously different. They're just, the names have changed, but the prices are very similar. And once again, that same kind of debate about 5 at the back continues. Once again, I'm only a human. So I consulted the Rate My Team computer. And the highest points scoring defender over the first 6 game weeks is, drumroll, Alexander-Arnold. But he's also, and also Laporte is the 2nd highest defensive scorer. But Alexander-Arnold is only actually the 8th highest scorer. So already there are better options in attack than him. But obviously they cost more as well. So in terms of value, points per million, the best defenders are Laporte, Zinchenko. This is one, bear in mind, this is a computer, not a human. Alexander-Arnold, Coleman above Luca Dean. But also, drumroll, Bolly at Wolves as well. Now,
Really?
Bolly is someone I had last season. And I can testify he's a good player to have. And I'd be marginally tempted. I don't think 5 million is too bad because he scores goals and Wolves got clean sheets as well. Maybe 5 at the back could work, but have teams got the right 5? I've posed that question there. So perhaps, I don't know if you think this as well, perhaps some of the defenders that have been mentioned in back 5, perhaps the principle's okay. They just got the wrong they've just got the wrong names in it. They should be getting kind of more mid-price ones, maybe a Leicester one, maybe Bolly at Wolves. What do you think of those types of defenders?
That's a really good point, actually, because as you said there, the problem with 5 at the back is that it leaves you with a very weak bench, I think. In that, you, as you say, you're having basically a 4.5 million non-playing striker, probably a 4.5 million midfielder as well. Yeah. So someone like Dendoncker.
Yeah.
So your bench is weak already going into game week 1. Now rotation isn't that much of an issue at that point of the season, but you're only one injury away, and it doesn't leave you with the luxury of, for example, benching a premium asset. It was like, for example, away at Manchester City, say. But that's again a good way of looking at it. In that personnel within that back 5, you could make it work by venturing lower down the price bracket. So, I think Wolves is a good example. I think we were put off massively by Doherty and Johnny. I'm not even considering them. What a 12 months that's been in that.
Yeah.
This time, well, say late August, early September, everyone was on him, and I'm just not even considering Doherty at the moment. But Wolves, I think, underachieved in terms of clean sheets. I think they got 9, just fewer than Bournemouth. But their defensive stats are really, really good. So amongst the best teams, so big chances conceded and things like that. So that's a good point. I'm worried about Wolves in terms of the Europa League. I think it depends what they do over the summer in terms of squad reinforcement. I'll be interested to see how serious Santo takes it. And I'm probably not going there early in the season. I think the fixtures improve. Maybe it's game week 12. So I might be looking at it then. Very interesting. I mean, what I will say, I know I've sort of poo-pooed the 5 at the back, but I do stress the importance of probably having at least 3 premium defenders, which is a real change for me. I mean, I've always been, top heavy in my teams. We're just looking at the points per match last season. So these are defenders around the 6.5 million to 7 bracket this season. So Alexander-Arnold, 6.4 points per game. Robertson, 5.9. Van Dijk, 5.5. And then you've got Alonso, 5.2. Laporte, 5.1. Now, comparable prices with the midfielders and forwarders this season, the best you can find among the sub 8 million players is Jimenez and Fraser. Now, they were scoring at 4.8 points per match, despite their excellent seasons. So, Alexander-Arnold absolutely whacks that out of the water. That's like 1.6 extra points per match on top of Jimenez, who's had a brilliant season. So that's why people are going big at the back. That's why I'll be going with a Liverpool defender, a Man City defender, and probably an Everton defender to start with. At least one of each. Probably double. Now that Mane and Liverpool are through Mane and Senegal are through the African Cup of Nations final. Probably Robertson as well. As me triple up into Liverpool. I'm not sure about 5, 3 definitely, 4 probably. I think not going 5 leaves you with a better structured squad elsewhere. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I was just while you're talking now, just quickly put up my team at the moment because I know we shouldn't tinker with our first drafts and all these types of things for game week 1. But I just do it perhaps on a daily basis. Just this player comes in, this player goes out, and it doesn't really matter. But I agree with you. A Liverpool defender, an Everton defender, and Man City. But I do waver over Man City as well. I don't think defensively their fixtures are as good as those other 2. But I do think in terms of potential and ownership, I think Man City is advisable. They can always be moved on. I actually think Ederson could be the best value one because he's the one I think is going to play. So if you want to take a risk and not have a backup, so back him up with Button, for example, that's a cheaper combination than getting Laporte at 6.5. Will Walker play? Will Zinchenko play? So they're even better options there. Zinchenko, definitely cheaper. But there's so much competition at left back at Man City, I'm not sure about it. So my back line at the moment, now this isn't all I'm going to go in with, but I just to show you the kinds of thing I'm going for flexible approach. So I have got Kelly in as my 4 million non-player. I've got then another slot which is going to be alternating between Diop and Taylor. So Charlie Taylor at Burnley and West Ham's Diop. Another good combination if Lewis Dunk stays West Ham and Brighton are a very good combination as well. And I'm sure there'll be others. But I definitely want those two. I'm willing to take that kind of movement there. Ederson back there as my Man City. And I'll either go with Ederson or no Man City, I think. I just think that's where the value is. And it's going to be Luca Dean or Coleman, one of the two. And one Liverpool. Could be Alexander-Arnold, could be Robertson, could be Van Dijk. I'm not up for two. In Sky game, really? I'm up for two. But I think I prefer to spend money on more. I say interesting players. Alexander-Arnold's interesting, but I don't think on the whole defenders are as interesting as midfielders and attackers. So I like perhaps a punt on, say, Pascal Gross at Brighton if he keeps doing well in pre-season. As I said, Maddison, Josh King as well, De La Fea as well. I just find these players a bit more interesting, and it's the way I have been playing. But I think there is a sort of divide at the moment. I think some newer managers do this. So this is a newer v older managers divide has occurred, and they're saying, oh, look at the older ones poo-pooing 5 at the back. They know nothing, and we upstarts know everything. Well, maybe. There's always things to learn as well. Yeah. But all I know is, as it came down to it, what we were talking about earlier, it's all about fun. And I can cheer a couple of clean sheets, but I can't cheer 5 or 6 of them. That's just that's boring for me. I'm quite a boring manager, but that's too boring for me. But I do find it exciting trying to find the next Zaki, trying to find the next Andy Carroll when he was good, Harry Kane when he was cheap. Remember back then, Raheem Sterling when he was emerging at Liverpool as well. Those are the players that I find much more interesting. But I do like to have a nice spread of players. And those, some, as you said, some premium defenders are good. 5? Oh, no, not for me. Now, I think we'll call it a halt now for now. We're going to have lots more questions to cover, though, in the next videos and podcasts, so keep an eye or an ear out for them. Also, those who want lots of stats at their fingertips, then please do sign up to be a Fantasy Football Scout member. Details on site. I'll put a little adverts as well up on site as well for people to look at. Also, a reminder to keep looking at the pre-season tab on Fantasy Football Scout. Lots of goodies there. For now, thanks for your time, Neil.
Yeah, cheers, Joe. I'll just, before I go, I'll point people in the direction of RMT, which we've been discussing today. Now, Chris, the RMT professor, has made some changes to that. So you'll see it's enhanced now. So you'll see things like adjusted points and expected minutes. So that's going to hopefully make it a more reliable, predictive model this season. So head over there to rate my team and build your team and check it out. But yeah, I'll see you on Thursday, Joe, for more of these community questions.
Yes, I just wanted to add, we keep adding things. I was saying goodbye sort of early, but we keep adding. There's always things to add, but I will just quickly add, yes, that is the plan really, that we'll get 2 of these out, these streams and podcasts out a week, and Tuesdays and Thursdays at the moment. It may not happen, we're hoping it will happen every week because people like that security, when things are, and so that is the plan as well. So yeah, look forward to seeing you again later in the week on Thursday, Neil. Goodbye.
Yep. See you then. Bye-bye.